All right, everyone, good evening and welcome to the Budget Balancing Committee meeting of February 6th, 2025. First order of business is approval of minutes. We actually, the minutes went out this afternoon. We have two sets of minutes. The first is from October 7th. Do I have a motion on those?
Motion approval is submitted.
Thank you, Bill. Oh, and we're going to do them separately, but
Okay.
we'll take motion on to approve from Bill. Is there a second? Thank you, Matt. Any discussion? I'll put it to, I think I need a poll since we're hybrid. So Teresa?
Yes.
Okay. Matt?
Yes.
Alan?
Abstain.
Yes.
Bill? Yes. Chair votes yes. So that motion carries. All right. And then the second item is approval of minutes from the January 23rd meeting, 2025.
So moved.
Thank you, Alan. Is there a second on that? Second by Bill. All right. A poll.
Did you say my name, Maya? Sorry. Yeah. Yes.
All right. Anne Marie?
Yes.
Matt?
I will abstain.
Okay. Alan?
Yes.
Yes.
Bill? Yes. Chair votes yes. Okay. Thank you very much. So thank you everyone for attending. Mr. O'Neill is unable to join us this evening. Mr. Mizuko is on his way and will be joining us shortly. But I'm not really sure where to start because the first order of business, the next thing would be to discuss the shared costs and any updates on estimates. Unless, Mike, you have numbers to share with us. I think Tony was going to share those.
That's correct, Madam Chair. I will get a quick update from him to see how far away he is, but otherwise we can maybe walk through the PowerPoint if that makes sense. Or should we wait for Mr. Mizuko for that?
I don't know why we would go through the PowerPoint. We went
Okay.
through it last week.
Okay.
Nothing's changed
Some
since.
numbers updated, but not much.
I think actually all the numbers we're looking at now were the numbers we looked at last week. They just weren't the numbers that were sent in advance of the meeting last time. And then they were all sent to us
Right.
prior to the meeting. So I think, yeah, there is the one slide that we'd like to look at. Thanks, John. The one that we have is related, there's one slide that kind of shows what we usually do for budget balancing, where it shows all the revenues and then so I guess it's the second to last page. Shows that was sort of that. So none of the revenue estimates would be changing. The state aid numbers are now in here, but I think they were actually in when we looked at this last. The numbers that we were going to look at were the shared costs. If you scroll down to the next page, I believe there's a little bit of news regarding health insurance. I don't know if there's news regarding retirement and pension. That was another number we wanted to look at. And I was curious how Chapter 90 funding may fit into this whole picture. Are there any other specific questions that we'd like to ask? Okay. So I believe that for health insurance, we had put in an 8% increase, but I am going to have to pull out my calculator to verify that because I'm not going to be able to do that off the top of my head. And I believe Mr. Mizuko has told me that it is likely to be at least 10 and possibly 10.5. Yeah. So let's see.
You always the bearer of good news.
Is that included in this forecast?
This is still the.
This is not updated.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my last one.
No, so I'm trying to figure out what numbers were used before. Mike, you don't happen to know, do you?
I would say historically, I know that this is going to be a large increase year. We went to the MMA conference the other day, and I know other health insurance companies are like north of 10%, 16% was, for example, if we were with the Maya health insurance, that's what their number was. I do believe that they're having calls in the near future. I think they're actually supposed to have one today, but I was trying to find the agenda online through the GIC. The last numbers that I had heard, they were looking at about 10.5% was the average with it. But I hadn't heard that those numbers were solidified yet. I was actually kind of hoping that we'd have that number for tonight since
Right.
it's a big chunk of
It is a
the
big
budget.
So this number here that we're looking at is an 8% increase over the previous year. And let's see, 674,6. So we were looking at a $1,493,963 increase. That represents 8%. But so each percentage point would be approximately $187,000. So if we go up another 1.5%, that is about $280,000 less than we anticipated. Or more than, less that we can spend, more that we would have to pay in cost, but it takes things down a little bit by about 280,000.
Would it be 1.5% or 2.5?
Oh, sorry, 2.5. Thank you. Thank you. You're right. That makes more sense. Okay. So 467,000
And
that we'd have to reduce the budgets by in order to balance, or an additional free cash that we would have to kick in order to balance the budgets.
so it looks like, just rough numbers, almost 3/4 of our projected tax increase is going solely to health insurance.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, because, right, our increase would be just about 2 million
Yeah.
in that ballpark.
Yeah.
The health insurance
Small,
increase
8%,
overall.
Yeah. Wow.
And do you know if there's any updates on retirement and pension numbers?
I have not heard of any, but as
Okay.
of today, I'm sorry, but Mr. Mizuko is walking in right now.
Is, sorry, everyone, it is, it's been a day, as they say.
Hi, Tony. So we were looking at the last numbers that we had. We're showing an 8% increase in health insurance, but we understand that we should be looking at about a 10.5% increase,
Yes, the
which is
GIC,
probably another $467,000.
correct. The GIC did not release their exact rate to its exchange because they tell us the meeting they will and then they do it. They didn't do it, but their projection is now 10.5. Ours fibrillates a little bit with that, but that's really a floor. And worst case scenario, if it comes in that we're 9.9, we're not talking a big budget saver there.
No.
But I would not feel comfortable with less than 10.5.
Okay.
All right. Are there any updates on retirement or pension numbers?
Other than they look bad, they're gonna get worse. No, the retirement board was late in filing paperwork with the state, so the projection that we have in there is probably comfortable, but at some point in the next 3 years, we're gonna get a wall up. It's not even the discount rate, it's the actual, you all know what I'm talking about. Valuation.
Actuarial.
Thank you, can't say the word, actuarial. People are living longer and collecting their pensions longer, so that combined with salary increases the last 10 years just causes the funded ratio to go down, which causes how much we have to kick up in.
Okay.
That isn't solely a Norwood problem. That was,
Well, I think it's, it's probably an extreme problem for Norwood, but no, it's not, it's not a,
okay.
yeah.
So the number we were looking at last week or last 2 weeks ago, whenever it was that we met last, I'm trying to figure out where is the free cash showing in here. It's not showing, so this is just, it's looking at the, okay. So we were looking at an $8.4 million shortfall, but now we're gonna add like we're somewhere in the neighborhood of an $8.8 million shortfall with
Conservatively, I
these numbers.
Yes. And the state's again looking at
Yeah,
adopting some additional local options, but it's already been sort of bashed as they come out the gate, so I wouldn't.
last week.
Yeah, and they did it last year, and they're like, great, we're gonna get this one done, and then they didn't do it, and then they've released it again, and I have a feeling it's gonna be a perennial file for the next 20 years, so.
the other thing that had come out of the state is they were supposedly gonna be more generous with their Chapter 90 funding.
We're still waiting to see what that would end up being. So best case scenario, if that works out, we go from maybe 900,000 to 1.4 million. But that Chapter 90 number has been frozen for 15 or 20 years. So it's nice, but it's nothing significant.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to figure out, what other moving pieces there are. It would be Chapter 90, of course, is restricted to highways, and roadways, but we've been contributing more than the Chapter 90. We've been doing more than that in road work, so it's possible we could shave back a little bit of our own contribution to that and let the state pick up more of it, which is always a good thing. So we have kind of fundamentally the same problem we had 2 weeks ago.
Well, it's worse. We didn't really expect it to get any better. Well, not necessarily. State aid came out. State aid was good. It is never a salvation in anything, but it was positive-ish. I don't
So,
expect that to change dramatically between now and the end of the cycle. I think as everyone knows, give or take 100,000. Excuse me. The House and Senate try to look a little bit better, but then they always find some weird number to adjust in the charter schools that takes away whatever we gain. So we're more or less where we were, a little bit worse off.
fundamentally, we need to provide some target numbers to general government, schools, and facilities and say, like, what do we think that we're willing to spend this year? And obviously that's informed by the original budget that came in and said, like, all right, here's what we would like to do. Any discussion on where we go from here?
Well, I mean, the way we, we look at it in the FinCom is that, we have a fundamental issue with, using free cash. Number one, it's contrary to our, financial policies as well as long-term. It's not fiscally sound to use one-time money for operational expenses. Having said that, we also recognize we have a large amount of free cash this year, and when you have that amount of free cash, you're not going to make major changes to the budget such to the point where you're going to be letting people go. That just isn't going to happen. We understand that, and we realize that. But we would like to keep the increases to a more reasonable level, given those factors. 6% and 8%, general government in the schools is just not what we're looking for. This is what we propose. General government, contractual obligations, and the additional funds related to trash. The schools, contractual obligations, transportation increases, and up to 5 additional positions. And I think there was also a small number in out-of-district costs, which we would also throw in to the mix. So for the schools, the number's probably, I don't know, 6.1%, whatever. I'm not sure what the exact number is. You can figure that out. And again, I don't know what the number is for the town, for general government, but what it does is it gives you all your contractual obligations, everybody's job is safe, and it acknowledges the fact that, your trash contract is increased significantly, and we're not gonna, ding you on that. Just like with the schools, we're allowing them the additional costs associated with the transportation. So we still have to meet with facilities, their personnel costs were not significant, we will talk to them about maybe reducing some of their operating expenses because they have been sending some money back the last couple of years, but we won't know what that number is until we formally sit down with them and have some discussions. This should be about a month ago.
I think when Alan and I were talking about this, that just to give some context to the 5 rule positions that we're suggesting, it's not so much about capping the numbers. It's about the fact that when we went to the voters and we said, you know, we're going to build a new middle school, we told them it was going to require new bus routes and 3 to 5 positions. So we're comfortable with that. But we would like to see what it would look like to pull a budget back to that level.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because we can run back and see what it is. I can tell you, the number that's in there is close to just contractual obligations and trash. The general government budget's headcount neutral. What about salaries are obviously the most significant cost. What about significant non-salary related contractual costs? So I'm mostly thinking around IT. Software in general is becoming ridiculous to purchase and the costs are just escalating, but there might be a package that, you know, we may have 30 different software packages that each of them are going up $3,000 a piece. Not saying that, but if we have a large contract like that, what's the thought process behind that? Because you can do that with other budgets. You could say, all right, hey, training is $8,000. Let's staying at that number. I know software is always something we struggle with, probably on the school side as well with Joe. Not trying to carve a million exemptions, but you could have a $40,000 piece of software go up to $48,000.
I think typically when we, as a budget balancing, look at things, we say like, this is our target. And then we reconvene, right? And so I don't think it makes sense to have like a whole big what if analysis right now.
Sure, I would agree. And I guess at that point, like if the munis charge, I don't know what the exact, if that's up $50,000, because that's a significant charge, we would obviously have that conversation that that's not a, you know, that's not the same as the subscription of the Globe going up $9.
Again, in budget balancing, we don't specify, you know, take a few dollars here, put a few dollars here. We give you the target number. You come back to us with what it means, and then we can make decisions at that point.
But I think we had said last time that the school budget, 1% is around $600,000.
663 or something like that.
We'll go just round numbers for now. No, I'm just saying that, like, you know, if we're able to trim, you know, $1.2 million off that and a bit off, then maybe we can get down to the point where we're, you know, we're a little bit more comfortable with how much free cash we have, and maybe we're comfortable that the following year we could also support the budget if necessary, that it's not creating as much of a fiscal cliff.
How much free cash was used last year to balance the budget?
It's right here. It was, well, it was 2.2 million in free cash and then like almost 3 in the override stabilization. So it was about almost 5.2 million. Somewhere between 5.1 and 5.2, but. So we would still be looking at more than that this year, even with this scale back, but no.
Do you have numbers to what, Alan, to what you just said?
Again, I don't know what the town's contribution would be. However, looking at the material that was given to us by Sean, presented by Sean last meeting. Give me just a second, Bill. Let's look at that. So for the schools, salary increases 2.3 million. I'm just rounding. Transportation about 900,000. That's 3.2. I don't know what the number would be for personnel, because they were looking at upwards of 11.6 positions total, you know, not solely related to the middle school. So you're talking at least, you know, 3.2 million just out of salary increases in transportation, a little bit extra for, out of district, which I think was 70,000. So again, I don't know what the staffing, cost will be, but you're probably in the range of, you know,
So if we-
3.5 to 4 million, maybe.
Right, I mean, if you look at
Couldn't tell you
roughly half that number, right?
Yeah.
So if it's, we were at 3.8% plus 1.5%, so that was 5.3%, and then another,
exactly.
so,
0.6,
yeah.
So you probably, you know, I don't know, again, 3.7. That's just a round number, plus or minus. It would be what the increase is. If you knock it down 1.2 million, it's gonna be like, between 3.7 and 3.8 is an increase.
But you're targeting sort of I'll use the word formula. These are the parameters, then see what the numbers come in at. So that way we're not obsessing about a percentage or a dollar amount. It's more what will look like with these conditions.
Mhm.
We're not telling the school department, we can't, you know, if we say 5 positions, you know, we can't tell them which 5 positions. We would hope that the 5 positions would be related to the middle school, because that's what we promised the taxpayers.
Tim promised me 5 assistant town managers out of his budget, so.
You'll definitely, when I look at this again, so, you know, I take from my staff and my principals when they bring me certain numbers and certain requests. These are things that are necessary for school improvement, right? And not just school improvement, but to do what we're doing now. And so, they're necessary. What I will do is I will go back and I will look at things that may have been in here for a while that we need to look at, that may not be necessary anymore, and we'll look at it that way.
Mhm.
So I'm, you know, I don't feel comfortable making a promise on the number of positions, but I feel like I can at least bring the school committee some tiered reductions that they can choose from that would work to try to get us to a number that's reasonable. But likely not looking at the new positions, but doing shifts, different things like that. So I'm more comfortable with the percentage number to say, okay, let's try to hit that mark and really look into the budget even deeper to that.
Okay.
I think there's, yeah, if we're being careful. If we talk about what we promised to the taxpayers with the middle school opening, there's also things that we promised in the ed plan that we're not going to be able to do in the current budget. So I think that argument has to kind of rings hollow a little bit when you talk about the positions, because there's already things that we can't do. We can't. So
Don't mention that.
I won't mention them. I refuse. So saying, you know, we have to stick to 5 positions because that's what we promised the taxpayers is kind of talking out of both sides of our mouth. I think that we have to admit that unfortunately the, you know, previous iterations of that promise were completely erroneous. They shouldn't have, the people who uttered them should not have promised 5 positions. 3 to 5 positions would have been enough to open an entirely new grade in a new middle school. Just want to say that on the record. So I think that there's just a little bit of being honest with ourselves about what we promised, what we're not going to be delivering on in either case, and how we got to those promises.
Well, I mean, we're talking about 5 positions. If you want to have more positions at the middle school, you can eliminate positions somewhere else. That's okay. We're looking at net positions.
I'm aware of that. I mean,
I get it.
because positions are people, and so I hate saying that, and positions are supporting the kids. So like, if there are positions that can be eliminated, I'm all for it. I'm not trying to say keep everyone in the district, pay them all. I don't care. I mean, that's not where I am at all. But yeah, I think that, you know, it takes a hard look. And so right as of right now, with the way the principal's coming back and saying what they need to continue to provide the services, that was the figure we landed on, was the 11.8.
Yeah,
11.6. Thank you. 11.6. But of course, you know, that's the committee will go back and, you know,
That's sort of
Really?
their first draft of giving the numbers, staffing wise.
Yeah, so we went through every staff member everywhere and the requests for staff. So there's certainly staff is required to open up the middle school as
Clearly.
shared. And there's needs elsewhere too in the district, right? I mean, one of the things that I'll bring up over and over again is that, you know, that the governor is looking at a 6.8% increase for us based on our current enrollment numbers and the dynamic and the complexity of the kids that we have. right now, and we're opening the middle school on top of that. So it's a challenge to say, okay, now let's go down to 6.1% and try to open a middle school and do that too. I'm looking at these numbers, and I'm looking at free cash, and I'm hearing everything everybody's saying. So I think in terms of how we address this number, I think it's a deep dive look at everything and not those new positions, because we do owe it to the middle school and the voters to put together a solid educational plan that was promised. Get everything elsewhere and kind of go from there.
Okay.
Teresa?
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at what Sean had given everybody at the last meeting that I think is what Alan is referencing. And I wrote down, Alan, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said so far you and the FinCom would be in support of our contractual obligations, the transportation increase, and up to an additional 5 FTE. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think we also said that you get a number for out of district. This is DESI 9,000 category of an increase of 70,000. We said we'd include that also.
Okay, thank you. So if I'm looking at what Sean shared, and then thinking about what we promised the voters, and then also building off of what Tim was just saying around the 6.8% increase from the state, the base salary contractual increase, the transportation, and if we went down from 11.6 to 5 FTEs, that puts us below the state 6.8. But then also on John's document from last week, he had for about $743,000, which is a 1.2% increase. Some things in there are also contractual. He just broke them out different around like lunch stipends and other stipends. So there's contractual stuff embedded in a different category than what you may have seen when you were looking at salary increases. And also in those other increases, it talks about like curriculum and professional development. And that's very much two things that we had promised to the voters with the override. And as a school committee at our last school committee meeting, we had a lot of discussion around, post override, what we're still trying to do and continue to invest in our professional development and our ongoing curriculum refresh. So I'm just trying to take all the different pieces we're talking about and explain a little bit more what was on that proposal you saw last time from Sean and Tim.
If I could, so you're pitching sort of a framework for us to look at things through. I would assume we would need to come back in fairly short order and just sort of tease that out and see what it looks like. I mean, I have most of what's in the general government budget today. That's pretty much already there. I could be wrong. Maybe it comes in lower. But we need to go back and run some numbers and say, okay, this is actually what we're looking at. Are folks interested in saying, let's see how that looks next week and what the impact would be? I'm not trying to rush us, but we're gonna figure out, like, are we moving forward? So you said we'd like to see this framework. If everyone says, can we see that framework? I mean, your call, I don't know if Budget Balance is gonna vote tonight on that is the framework, or let's see what the numbers would look like under that framework and if we think it's doable or not. And to Alan's point earlier, it's not. We would need to see what it looks like. So I need to come back with, if I just did these numbers and are there any other outliers, here's what it would look like.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think this, this would get us back more to the traditional role of the budget balancing committee, where there were more iterations and we would say like, all right, let's try this target and see what that looks like, and then have some more discussions. It's been nice in the past since the override that we've been able to do this process more quickly, but looking at the numbers this year, it seems like the way to do the process more quickly is to commit to more than $9 million in free cash. And that feels really uncomfortable and really irresponsible. And so I think given the situation, it's worth everybody, I don't want to have meetings just for the sake of meetings, but I do think it's worth it for us to explore this a little bit more and push back a little bit on like, what would this look like? And we have not taken any votes. FinCom has not taken any votes on this, right? Like, this is what we as the FinCom reps are expressing our concerns, but we don't have a specific mandate from the FinCom for a particular number or anything like that. But I just think that in order for everyone to feel confident that we've done the right thing in the end, we need to work harder at this.
Yeah, I think that's helpful guidance. It kind of gives us some purpose, and some framework
Well,
for
it's-
the future meeting.
Yeah, it's not arbitrary either. It's, I'll go back and look at the general government budget. What are your contractual obligations? And then what is trash? And let's see what that is. So it's not, in the past, we sometimes argue over, well, 4 or 5, which is better? Well, this is a little, at least as a starting point, a more rational. Look, we know we have some particular issues with the middle school, and maybe at the end of the day, it doesn't work with that, but going forward, we are probably going to be in a, what are your contractual obligations, lane for a while.
Yeah, and in terms of, the school budget, which asked for 8.1, we're maybe closer to the range of, 6.1 plus or minus. I mean, you look at some of the other communities in the area, and most of them are a lot lower than that, without question. Probably few that are higher. But in general, I think you're going to see that most communities like Westwood, this is just right off the website. I think the request was 3.68. Stoughton was 3.8. Wellesley 3.24.
Listen,
Needham.
Let me raise the residential tax rate to what Wellesley and Weston pay, and let me tell you, we'll never have a budget issue.
And I'm guessing their chapter 70 was.
Well, district high schools.
No idea. I'm just saying that, their numbers are in, Needham is the same thing. They're in the 3 to 4 range. And I think 6.1 is extremely generous. Because we have to sell this, we have to sell this to town meeting members too.
Yeah.
And I've had some good town meeting members, people who have always supported the schools and, not the rabble rousers, have come up to me and said, 8%, 6%, not gonna fly.
But to be clear, you're not saying 6.1% or 6.5. You're saying you think if you do this, it'll get you down to that number, right? Because I still don't love the idea of arbitrarily targeting a number. I like much fact that we're saying, do it according to these parameters and then see what the number is. Maybe it comes in at 7.3 and we say, geez, we eliminated all this and it's still at 7. And I'm making that up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I
I'm on
think,
the other end.
yeah, I mean, I think we looked at it and, an additional 5 positions, with everything else, again, plus or minus, would be in the range of like 6.1%, which is a substantial increase. Considering that very little of the increase is associated with out of district, which is where we've had the problems in previous years. It hasn't been those other categories. It's mostly been the out of district.
Well, I mean, I think there's been a bunch of places where we've had challenges in the past, but, it's nice to see that the state is bringing more Chapter 70 money. It's nice to see that Student Opportunities Act is being funded and going to according to its planned intervals. And so it's nice to see those increases.
That's only, I'm going to bring it up because I'm going to beat the dead horse that's sitting there, but that's only if we were to get the entire increase. We know that doesn't happen because it's
You get way more than that increase.
Well, of course, because
Right.
the expected, the expected net school spending per the town and,
Right.
Yeah. which is expected.
So
Not-
what
not-
would you propose as the alternative? How would you like to do this?
No, but I have definitely brought it up in the past. I have, of course, thought that when we get massive Chapter 70 increases, that more of that percentage should be additional to the schools and understanding that in future years, that could come down to nothing. That it's a influx amount of money that would get you through those times that you are dealing with the student populations that are having the most issues. And you hope that at some point finds level, that water finds level. I've made no hiding of that in the past. I don't even know exactly how that would work. But it just didn't ring true that, when it seemed like our needs were becoming so much greater, that it was being just lumped in with the rest of the town. And when the needs of the schools are not the same.
Absolutely.
When you have a family move in, we immediately feel it. You don't feel that in fire and police and, utilities and things, or, in DPW, the way that you're going to feel it instantly in the schools. So it felt very unbalanced. And we've said this in the past, that it felt very unbalanced. Now, I understand what you're saying, that if you get that money, like, well, the town's kicking in, from tax, I completely understand that, but there is an expectation that your tax dollars pay for education.
Of course.
There is absolutely that. So all we were trying to get to was that, and this is kind of separate from this in any way, because I've already had my gripe with the student exact even being lumped in with Chapter 70 in the first place, which it shouldn't be, because if they want us to spend the money specifically on the students that need it the most, they should not give it to us in a fund that goes to a town. Period. That's there's that. But yeah, so that's.
But I think if you look at it, you know, as we've done the analysis before, that there were plenty of years where Chapter 70 was going up minimally and the town contribution was going up significantly
Mhm.
to offset. And so in some ways, it's like Chapter 70 is finally catching up with providing the support to the overall district that it should have been doing for years, but the town was making up for that for a number of years. And so, you know,
my
I
flip
think,
side of that argument is the town was making up for the years that they didn't spend on the schools, the years and years and years, because, you know, so, I mean, there's the flip side
The
of that.
third flip to that is that, I get it, look, the school department generates the revenue, they should keep it. Does the light department keep their revenue?
No, and I understand that. No, that's my argument. I totally understand that. And that's why I hate that the SOA is lumped into the,
But to that point, if 100% of that, and more than 100% is going to the school department, went to the school department, you're then not going to get that same size of the budget. And if you boil it all down that way, it's just going to make the school department more of a target by saying, gee, look at how much of the property tax they're taking. Because there's $5.5 million we take from the light department. We're not being recorded, right?
yes.
yeah, we are.
Well, when we're on an NTM, I mean, there's a $5.5 million payment there that could go away that most other towns don't have. The $2 million in indirects that we treat as a revenue, that sort of all gets split. I mean, nothing's making the pie bigger.
Yeah.
So
No,
kind of
I
moving
completely
around
get
is
that.
just-
It's more kind of a
For every
fundamental
dollar
thing
in
with
your
the SO.
budget that's more than 70, Chapter 70 money, you've spent every dollar.
No, absolutely.
Just how you, just how you
The
report it.
SO, I just take exception when you mentioned SOA, because I point out does the light department have to, you know, go to the state and say where they spent every one of those dollars on the
Workforce actually with the FERC requirements,
on the residents of the town, and where, you know, so like but that's why that money goes back to them. That's kind of my point with that the SOA just is, you know.
I just brought up the
we
SOA
have to-
because we were talking about a 6.8% increase, and the reason, part of the reason why it's a 6.8%
Because of the
increase is
SOA,
because
and
of
we're
the
being
SOA.
expected to file a report on how we spent every one of those dollars on students in town, and we can't say that because we don't know how much of it comes to it, and it's just that whole thing, because it's lumped in with
You got
tax money,
100% of
but
it.
it's lumped in
Yeah.
with tax money.
And then plus,
Mhm.
Every other district has figured it out.
Oh, Teresa? Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Maya. I'm just trying to run some numbers so we can talk in data and I don't get emotional like I did last meeting. So first of all, like to compare us to Westwood, like, I would like us not to, because Westwood's Chapter 70 is only going up $213,300, where ours is going up 1.1 million. So two totally different stories. But when we're looking at our Chapter 70 at 1.1 million, but if we're then in the same conversation being asked to cut 1.2, we're being asked to cut even more than the state is recognizing we need.
No,
No,
you're not
no.
being asked to cut anything. You're being asked to reduce your increase, right? And the increase is currently, what is the increase right now? It was around
8.1.
8.1 million.
No, 8.1%.
8.1%. What's,
Just under 5 million?
what it's five?
Almost 5 million.
Yeah, so it's a $5 million increase. So you're being asked to reduce that to like a roughly $3.8 million increase, which is still well more than the $1.1 million, $1.2 million extra you're getting in. So it'd be like you get all of the Chapter 70 increase plus an additional, what, 2.6?
Yeah.
Thank you.
so all this is to see if you believe after these cuts are made, these numbers, you can live with it and therefore appropriate that much less free cash.
Right.
Still need free cash,
Still need a lot of
It's all
free
about
cash.
The amount of
because
free
the
cash.
But less.
the taxes,
That's what you're
the
saying.
Right.
And
taxes are
services.
barely gonna cover
I'm just,
the,
I'm uncomfortable with Alan's discussing head count. We all don't like head counts. We all see a lot of head counts, particularly on the school side, go high. Never mind whether they're justified or not. You just see head counts going high and you know what that means for money. So I understand kind of the focus, but at the same time, if you can keep all the people you want and cut somewhere else, as long as you get to that number, I'm not going to tell you how to run the school system,
That's fine.
except
Yeah.
for the reality that in the town, we can't afford everything. So some cuts have to be found
Right.
somewhere, you know?
So I think that when we walked out of here last time, we were looking at like $8.4 million in free cash was what we were guessing. But since then, we think health insurance is going up like another
I would call it
467,000.
9 million to be safe.
Right, okay, so now we're looking at 9 million, and so Alan is asking for
How far we go
probably
back.
like roughly $2 million in cuts all pulled, like just ballpark numbers,
Whatever number is,
right?
yeah.
So we still would be looking at $7 million in free
Still-
cash.
still
We're not
7 million
talking
instead of
like,
9 million.
let's scale back to
And
nothing,
last time we were talking 8 million.
right?
And again, Bill, we don't feel comfortable with that. You know, we make no bones about that, but we're also understand reality is when you have a lot of free cash, it's difficult to make some of the cuts you think that should be made if the free cash wasn't there. Having said that, next year where there won't be free cash, we're going to have some difficult decisions to make, really difficult decisions. And what we do this year sets us up for what we do next year.
Absolutely, you're making it worse by not making any cuts, because when you finally run out of that free cash, now you've raised that bar so high, how are you getting down?
Mhm.
But if there's a desire to just look at a different model, we'll have to come back in a week and see what that model sort of looks like.
Well, and just to be honest with you, in terms of the reductions, I mean, I don't know, and this is a question for you and Marie and Teresa. You know, I want to bring possible reduction cuts to you guys to have the conversation to decide before we go there. So I don't feel like I can come and say, hey, this is what we're going to reduce, this is what we're going to.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, you might be able to say, hey, there's software, but I'm not going to be able to do that in this kind of forum.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think to Bill's point about the positions, I think maybe the solution is, you know, you look at, okay, you had numbers about like, this is much for contractual increases, this much for transportation, this much for out of district. And you had a rough number for 11.6 positions, right? And so like, you know, I think it would be like, all right, well, look at like on average, how much would 5 positions be? And put that number in and then figure out, you know, if you can make some adjustments and move some things around and that becomes 6 or 7 positions that you can fit in that number, you know, like it's not the 5, because like I said, that's not our goal.
Yeah.
But it's like just that idea of heading towards that target.
Mhm.
That would, my comfort level would better that way.
Yeah.
If that's the process we decide.
And of course, we all know that we're adding positions, it's not just even the current budget. We're committing to
Sure. That.
all the long-term
Oh, yeah,
costs.
yeah. All
Yeah.
right, so let's bank on 5 superintendent salaries.
Let's play nice in the sandbox.
I see a gaping hole. where I can-
I think nobody's trying to screw the system. We haven't invented yet. It's just, let's look at a framework and see what it is. No matter what, even if the number ends up being roughly where it is, at least you can go to town meeting and say, look, at these limitations were made and the numbers are coming in still at these limitations, but with a little bit of work to do to see what it looks
I
like.
don't think the numbers are gonna come in close to what we have now, but we'll see what we'll wind up with.
Yeah.
But I think what we're talking about is something which we feel that, given the reality, is something we can go with a straight face to town meeting members and the voters and say, this is what we think is, this year is the best for the town.
Teresa?
Yeah, just super quick math. Obviously, Tim and Sean will have to check me and we'll get back to you. But I think if we do what you just spelled out, Maya, it only reduces about 800,000, not 1.2 million.
Okay.
Instead, you're taking some time to look at the model and see what it would actually mean.
Well, I mean, we'll take a look at those numbers, but, we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, we would like to see what it would take to get down to that 6.1.
All right, so I guess the question is, what are the reasonable next steps? A week doesn't give you much time to do anything, right? And then the following week is school vacation week. So
I'll be here.
I will too.
I'm not going in.
So what do we think about another meeting?
It's gonna be on 24.
Am I the only old fashioned person who has something he writes in?
Not one, but two.
Oh, okay.
When is our next regular schedule? Or
Really don't.
We don't have
Yeah,
it.
Scheduled.
Okay.
This is all ad hoc.
Is the 27th work?
No,
No, that's a bit, I mean, when do we meet? I have a, on,
year, sorry.
right,
Not
on
for me.
Monday, the 24th. I've got a 7 o'clock, but we could meet earlier, and just get it done as soon as we can.
I can do that.
I will not be able to
Okay.
do that day. Sorry.
All right.
Tuesday, the selectmen meet, the school committee meeting Wednesday, the 26th.
We are
Holiday
not.
March, you have a town meeting in closed session that day.
Uh,
Not anymore.
Not anymore. We're not doing the March.
Say the 26th maybe?
Wednesday, the 26th.
Can we go earlier?
Like,
Date.
what do you mean?
Well.
Earlier in
is
time
about-
or in date?
Time.
Okay.
I can be here anytime.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, what time are you thinking?
What's the earliest you guys have ever done?
I'm all for 10 a.m. meetings.
I can't do earlier than 5.
It's like I literally could be turned.
I know your boss. I can call him.
Mhm.
Five on the 26th.
Generally consensus,
Can we do
5 on
that?
February 26th.
I think I can make that work.
26th.
February 26th, 5 o'clock. We'll obviously have some stuff ahead of time.
Yeah.
Mel, if that's the date we go with, if you could send out a calendar invite for 5 on the 26th.
No problem, Tom.
All right. Any further discussion?
Just a thought process without, we'll take one final look when the GIC comes in, but I don't think it's gonna be very different for that 10.5. That 10.5, we have programmed from retirement. Obviously, if they change, they change, but are we generally good with those numbers? We're gonna come back and look at what the shared costs are kind of fixed for the most part. I gotta take one more look at the actual number because it's trending with some inflation, but that might get shaved down. But are we set with that? Are we?
Okay, the debt service will reflect what we voted on in the fall.
Correct.
Okay.
So you're saying keep that minimum?
Well,
Sure.
We're gonna go to 10.5, and I'm looking at more the shared cost. I mean, is there any further discussion we want to have on those? We're not gonna add anything to them that's not. I guess this one, I'd say, I don't anticipate adding anything to them other than something that's contractually obligated or what the number's gonna be.
Mhm.
Did we want any further discussion on them? Other than they'll get refined down as time goes. I'm still waiting on Blue Hill's number. That might come down a little bit.
Okay.
Our student count was roughly flat, but as you know, their formula's a little wacky sometimes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I mean, the reality is that's gonna just affect free cash a little bit when everything is said and done.
Correct. I don't think it'll be significant, but if we're sort of accepting that those are what they are, what that final free cash projection is and the different scenarios or modeling that we do would reflect that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you look at these, I mean, some of these shared costs, there's just absolutely no choice. And some of them, the ones where there is a little bit of flexibility, the capital equipment, some of the like transfers to the various stabilization funds and things like that. First of all, those aren't big amounts of money and, you know,
I mean,
like,
Medicare's Medicare. It is what it is. So.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing added in here to any of these numbers, so we're not doing anything different. We can probably revise the capital number down a bit.
Yeah.
Additional vehicle prices are starting to catch up as the state's contracts run out, and they sign new ones.
All right. Any other discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Matt. All right, poll, Teresa,
Yes.
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Anne Marie, yes, chair votes yes, that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
What about Tara?